Welcome to A Free Solution. It's me, Tim O'Connor, your Thursday host. Going out to you. Today, we are going to be talking about Canada. But first, guys, this show is available. WYSL on the podcast version, WACK a little later in the day. It's available on the much talked about Spotify podcast app. It's available all over the place. You can check out our shows through the WYSL.com page. And guys, as I mentioned, this is a platform for libertarian politics. It is greatly appreciated. We try to step outside of the orthodoxy. We try to step outside of the normal everyday run of the mill arguing over what our elected officials demand we argue over. But today, guys, I'm probably going to travel down this wormhole of pop culture, this wormhole of Canada, guys, is all over the news, all over the news. Let's deal with number one out of Canada, the longest convoy in the history of the free world is setting records, guys. People are saying it's 70 kilometers long. It is protesting icy roads and conditions in Canada because, oh no, that's what the official Canadian Broadcasting Company came out with to say that's what this convoy protest is all about. And guys, so when you have a state-run narrative, state-run media, guys, ladies and gentlemen, please listen to me. The news is not the news anymore. And so what we're saying, guys, is there is a legitimate order that does not allow unvaccinated truck drivers to cross the border between the United States and Canada. Now, as we all know, there is supply problems, there's inflation, and the government response to COVID seems to take every opportunity, guys, I don't like to overplay these things. I don't like to get upset, but the government response to COVID is exacerbating everything. It's absolutely exacerbating everything. So 70 kilometers long, perhaps this convoy is going to be. The news is trying to say that the truckers are driving around to protest icy road conditions. Some news is telling the truth. They are protesting the vaccination mandates. And guys, I hate to tell you this. Some of you might be surprised. Some of you might not have heard this in the mainstream news. But Britain is now officially the land of the free and the home of the brave. Ask me why. I'll be glad to tell you. They have lifted all COVID restrictions. They understand that the government response to COVID is hurting the people. All right. It's hurting the people. So in an article, from CBS News, January 19th, 2022, most legal restrictions to prevent the spread. And guys, this is the issue, right? To prevent the spread of coronavirus in England will be dropped next week, according to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He told the British Parliament last week on Wednesday that face masks will no longer be mandatory anywhere in England. And guys, look, this guy never took this COVID stuff seriously anyways. He was having bashes at the Buckingham Palace. That's probably where the Queen hangs out. But he was having bashes in his house. Vaccination and masks were totally optional. This guy never took it seriously. He put on the show. He played the game. He took photo ops with masks on, but he never lived it himself. Okay. So that's a reality. England is dropping this. Canada, though, Canada is doubling down. They have inspired a mass protest, a movement, if you will, guys, a movement, if you will, at a time when our societies mutually are facing rising inflation, rising supply chain issues. And guys, truckers are the people. We don't have flying trucks yet. We don't have drone trucks yet. Okay. I'll talk about that too, but that's a different show. We're going to have those things someday, and someday soon. We're standing on the brink of a technological revolution, and that's okay. But that's not what I'm talking about. We are talking about individual rights, individual freedom. People have dedicated their lives to making money, hauling stuff from place to place, can no longer cross the American border. Okay. And I believe that US truckers who aren't vaccinated cannot cross into Canada. This is a freedom of movement thing. This is where libertarians win the day on open borders, opening up the borders, free flow of trade and travel. And I know like there's concerns, but should there be concerns between us and Canada? Look, guys, let's give you the date. August 2014, August 24th, 1814. Not since August 24th, 1814 have I been this disappointed in Canada. Their leader is horrible. He goes on French TV and says anti-vaxxers are racist and misogynist. And guys, those statements filled with hate and derision, they make it into the zeitgeist. I got a story to tell you. I'll tell it in the next break. It's about the COVID narrative. And how these lies and this mean-spiritedness survives, and it reaches into people's minds because they've been terrified by the government about a virus. And look, I get it, man. If you're afraid of the virus, you should be. You are judging your situation. Be afraid of the virus, but understand that the best information is not necessarily what the government does. The government is invested in power. The government is having a real communication issue about COVID. And so they've come up with mandates. They've come up with ways to slow the spread of COVID. But the thing about COVID is that it peaks and valleys just like the flu. It is based on weather. Honestly, they make a big deal about how Christmas caused a spike. The weather changed around Christmas. Okay. The air got dry, the air got cold. That damages your mucous membranes. And I know this sounds like I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I'm telling you that the weather contributes to COVID. That's it. It's already outsmarted the vaccine. We know that. These things are facts. So what I'm asking people out there to do, people like you and people like me that doubt this narrative, that have problems with what's going on, stay calm. Stay cool, stay collected. It's going to take a lot of love. It's going to take a lot of energy, guys, but let's keep it real. Let's support people like the truckers who are making a statement in Canada. I guess I got another, couple of stories from Canada. Canada is, if they're even more confused than the United States about the government response to COVID. People have tortured themselves. People are terrified, and you got to do your best to greet them with open arms, guys. It's a big deal. Like we need to have the emotional high ground, and to have the emotional high ground, we cannot simply respond emotionally to emotional tantrums. I liken it to like raising my kids or training a dog, right? Like if you respond emotionally to an emotional outbreak, guess what you did, right? You reinforced or encouraged that behavior. And guys, that's where we're at right now as the COVID narrative, even though we've been saying it for months, even though I've been saying it for months, even Kevin is pro-vaccine, that's fine. But Kevin is anti-mandates because he knows. And Larry Sharp also, guys, anti-mandates, blind obedience encourages blind rebellion. And how do we, and can we, maybe it's not even possible. These are questions that are really important. How do we help solve this problem for our children? How do we? And guys, making fun of them, poning them, I want that to be the way, but I know it's not. All right, look, it's Tim O'Connor, the Freedom Variant. I hope you guys check out my stuff. I hope you guys are having fun, and I hope you join me after the break. bonus content for the internet viewer. Guys, look, you guys are a lot of you that are watching this right now are already libertarians, right? And we know that this is an absolute disaster. Okay, what's going on as we watch this stuff start to fade, start to crumble? We know people are terrified. I'll talk more about it when the show comes back in, but I wanted to give a special shout out to the people watching on the internet because I appreciate it. And guys, you can actually subscribe to the show on Spotify and like pay for as little as 99 cents a month. That may seem weird, but we're going to probably need alternative platforms like YouTube. We're going to get probably quashed, right? Maybe on Facebook because we're pretty like low key, laid back. But guys, if you want to help out Larry, Tim, Kevin, like check out the Spotify thing, 99 cents a month. I don't know, or maybe it goes somewhere. I do know if Spotify makes money off of our podcast, they're going to make sure that more people see it. And even a small amount of money might make a difference as to the number of people that see the show. So I don't know. There's that, guys. That's the Freedom Variants asking you for financial support. And look, whatever, I'll do it anyway. You guys won't be able to get rid of me that easy. And this is the pause for editing. All right, guys, welcome back. Remember, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's courage to continue that counts. And I thought I'd start this segment with a few quotes from a Canadian icon, right? Keep on rocking in the free world. All right. It doesn't mean that much to me to mean that much to you. Don't let it bring you down. It's only castles burning. Find someone who's turning and you will come around. Give a hippie too much money and anything can happen. When we were strangers, I liked you, but from afar, when we were lovers, I loved you with all my heart. And guys, I am quoting Neil Young, right? The Canadian rock and roll superstar, the anti-government for dead in Ohio. Like, this guy grew up on freedom. This guy was anti-Vietnam War. This guy is now a pro-government worshiping, basically a clown show, man. And so look, he did some great work. Like I guess I'd draw an analogy, maybe pop culture. Stephen King did a lot of great work. Okay, like, but they have turned into government sponsored, they're not sponsored by the government, but government loving the narrative from the government. They've decided that the narrative from the government is incredibly important. And that, guys, is because of the messaging that the government has sent out. And look, these things survive the zeitgeist. They survive in the collective consciousness. And that's the issue. Okay. So Neil Young, I'm going to talk about him in a minute, but I want to tell you a story that happened to me the other day. And I think this story is important. I think there's a reason it happened to me. And I think there's a reason why I want to share it with you. Okay. And I think probably if we think about it, we've all had similar stories. But I was in a convenience store where I'm doing some work. I don't want to mention the name of it. The place has always been masks are optional. So the questions about the mask mandate that's going on right now, obviously, to me, it was unconstitutional. Maybe not to you. If it's not to you, I understand. Okay. But so I'm in there and I'm hanging out, and there's two older guys. And look, man, they're in their 70s, right? And so where's the mortality rate hitting really hard with COVID? Yeah, in your 70s, okay? And these guys are vaxxed and masked, and ask me how I know, right? Because they were both in front of me in line, and I was not wearing a mask. And guys, they didn't say anything to me, all right? But they started talking to each other. They must be from the same community. They must know each other, okay? And they're like, one of the guys looks at the other one, and they're both wearing their cloth, their cloth masks wrapped tightly around their face. And like, look, man, I get it. All right. But we do know, and these are things that haven't made it into the zeitgeist, right? We do know that cloth masks seem to be the studies that have been done, the CDC director admitting, that the shipment of N95 masks at the expense of the federal government to every house in the United States. Okay, guys, that's a thing now. Billions of dollars for N95 masks. Okay. Hey, look, if an N95 mask if you have a comorbidity that you're concerned about, an N95 mask is a proper step in California. N95 masks for school kids. I'm telling you right now, I hope that doesn't go through, but that's a different subject. All right. Two older gentlemen, very upset about their situation. They were emotional, but they were talking to each other, and it was good to see that, like, they're getting along. And they're both wearing masks. One guy says, I think we're almost done with this stuff, because this was shortly after the declaration of the unconstitutionality of the mask mandate. And the other was like, we're going to be stuck with it for another year. Like, these anti-vaxxers that won't get their vaccine be changing the virus. And I'm like, oh my God, man. First of all, you're wearing a cloth mask, okay? And second of all, the promise that was made, if we effectively used the vaccine, which I think that we did, I don't care what anybody says, I think that a lot of people got it. Herd immunity is real. That we probably gave the vaccine to a lot of people that didn't need it, especially if they had COVID, okay, and survived it with no problems. We wasted vaccines on them. All right. Wasted vaccines on them when supposedly our goal is to maximize the number of people that get the vaccine throughout the world, because this thing travels the world like lightning. Okay, those things are facts. Those things are not disputed. What may be disputed, and I think it's getting less and less disputed, is the efficacy and effectiveness of cloth masks, and the efficacy and the effectiveness of the vaccine. And so, but what they were told, what they were promised, okay, was that if they got the vaccine, that they would be protected from COVID. All right. And that was a promise that the president made himself, the president that we have now. And guys, I want to be clear. Trump is advocating for every single one of you to take the vaccine as well, which I'm not sure it's a bad idea. If I was over 70 or something like that, I might consider it, guys. I might even consider when I start getting closer to 60. But right now, to be fair, the vaccine is not for me. And there's reasons why, but the reasons are none of your business. Like, no offense, right? Like, I'm, being all badass, but that's not the point. So these two guys are, at least one of them is absolutely convinced that the people who did not take the vaccine caused the virus to mutate, and that they're malicious in that intent, and that they are attacking him. That's how he feels, right? That's what's been presented to him by our government. All right. That was never going to be accurate. Okay. That viruses do not have a brain. Viruses do not have an agenda. They don't even have a nucleus inside of their deal there. Like, they don't. All a virus wants to do is replicate. That's it. We already have the Omicron variant that has obviously plainly escaped current treatments. Well, I don't know about plainly or anything like that. Strange things are happening. The government is withdrawn its endorsement for the I want to say the Pfizer monoclonal antibodies, but there's still an antibody system that appears to be remdesivir has been withdrawn its use. The monoclonal antibodies associated with remdesivir, whatever, because it's been withdrawn. The FDA just said you can't use it anymore, which, guys, I don't know how we got here. Like, if my doctor tells me that I can take a monoclonal antibody, I'll go find that monoclonal antibody. All right. I don't know how we got here where the government, at the drop of a hat, pivots on a dime and withdraws what has been a successful treatment that the government was saying was a successful treatment. All right. So circle back around. Two old guys, right? Terrified, angry. The promises were made to them, okay, by the government that the government could not keep. Those promises were not scientific. They were noble lies. No, a Faucism noble lie, one after the next, our government has handed out about COVID. All right. So they're bringing it full circle to Kathy Hochul and her current noble lies about masking children and vaccinations. Okay. Excuse me, guys. I'm pretty passionate today, and I apologize I didn't hit the mute button on that one. But look, the issue, guys, is the government makes promises it cannot keep. And at what point do we hold them accountable? So next segment, we're going to be talking a little bit more about this Neil Young thing and then something that happened in Quebec. But as always, I get off on that tangent of the mainstream media and the government doing things that they think are noble. And guys, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt here. Fauci, I heard Fauci say, look, if you get the vaccine, the virus is not going to mutate. Like, that's not true. The variant came from Africa, as near as we can tell, and we've always short supplied Africa with vaccines. We've short supplied them with everything. But regardless, all right, that's not the issue. People, Bill Maher, people on this show, starting to come out against this dystopian regime. And guys, I like that conversation, and we're going to have to talk about, once again, Neil Young, Joe Rogan, and what happened on the whole Spotify app. And this is pop culture reference. But again, I just want to go back to this deal. And I when I do the show myself, I get a little bit like caught up in my head and I lose track of things. But so bear with me. These poor guys are old. They're not going to live forever. And they're going to go away angry at the world. All right. With having been fed lies about science, having been promised political things that promises that cannot be kept by the government. And nor should those promises have been made. There was not enough data. The virus, the vaccine, the rapidly mutating stuff, the truth has not been told. So what's happening is the truth, at least the truth on some level, and science is being discussed on Joe Rogan's podcast. He's crushing the views. And guys, I'm not saying that, and here's the thing. I can't say that the people going on Joe Rogan are any better than what the government is doing, but I can tell you this, all right, they're not any worse. And they're exploring real issues about real situations. And when the FDA removes its approval for the emergency use authorization of monoclonal antibodies that it was just encouraging a week ago, should it have been approved in the first place? Should it have been emergency use authorized? Like, what is going on with that? Okay, like, what's going on with that? So the people on Joe Rogan's podcast are going to talk about what's going on with that. The people on CNN are going to go back and backfill for their favorite authoritarian, which is what they do. Which, when we see the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Company, backfilling for their favorite authoritarian, denying that a 70,000 truck convoy is going to Ottawa to protest the vaccine mandates, to try to make it about road conditions in Canada. The world, guys, not just me, not just you, the world is in trouble. So again, how do we solve that? I have solutions, I have ideas, but I'm not done making fun of the system. Guys, it's Tim O'Connor, the Freedom Variant. I'll be back right after these messages. Thank you all. Little bonus content once again for the internet viewer. Guys, remember, WYSL and WACK are brave enough to sponsor a free solution. And I cannot say enough about the fact that I get to share a platform with Kevin Wilson and Larry Sharp. And look, Kevin and I just concentrate on trying to have fun there. And I hope that you guys have caught some of the stuff that Kevin and I do together. We do handle intense issues like I'm doing today. But for the most part, we get together on Fridays, even though I joined them yesterday. Anyway, should I read the whole? I don't know. Some of you probably know the lyrics to Convoy, C.W. McCall's Convoy. Maybe I'll read a little bit of that live on air. I don't know. But the Canadian truckers are making a big deal out of this vaccine mandate and anti-border crossing stuff. Pause right now for editing that make Bob's life slightly easier. All right. Once again, it is your Thursday host for A Free Solution, Tim O'Connor, the Freedom Variant. Guys, follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. Guys, I got a YouTube channel. Good luck finding it. I don't even know how to direct you there. But we're doing the work. We're putting in the time. We're having the fun. And we're discussing Canadian truckers, Canadian rockers, and the dystopian nonsense about COVID and how that all ties in. So I don't know. Maybe some of you guys remember back in the 70s, there was a song by C.W. McCall called Convoy. And look, I don't know how much of this stanza I can read, but it was a dark moon on the 6th of June in a Kenworth pulling logs, cab over Pete with a reefer on and a Jimmy hauling hogs. We was heading for Bear on the I-10, about a mile out of Shaky Town. I says, Pigpen, this here's the rubber duck, and I'm about to put the hammer down. And that goes out to the Canadian guys who are driving to Ottawa this weekend to protest the vaccine mandates. All right. And guys, they can't drive across the border between the United States and Canada without a vaccine pass. And look, man, it's 50,000 trucks. $5 million these guys raised, man, through GoFundMe. I don't even know. They don't even know what they're going to do with the money. They don't even know who's in charge. Like, what do they do with that $5 million? And like, so that the GoFundMe has stopped accepting donations at this point, and people can get their money back. But I think they may come up with a good cause for that money, and they're entitled to it. So GoFundMe is not legitimately, like, they have canceled people in the past. It does not at this moment look like that's the case. Okay. So that's like kind of good news. They've raised a lot of money. I hope they do something wonderful with it, and I'm sure that they will. All right. The notion that the government should be stopping the free flow of travel between countries, especially because, and this is where they get into denying it. Okay. Like, the government response to COVID has caused a lot of problems, but the government is in denial, absolute in denial that they took power, they usurped power, they were granted executive orders, they took that power, and they can't come up with effective strategies because there's not an effective centralized strategy to deal with COVID. Okay. The vaccine is a good idea for a lot of people. Okay. The vaccine is not a good idea for me. And guys, you've heard me talk about medical freedom. All right. In the context of, hey, even your medical exemptions, like your religious exemptions, even though that's been a constitutionally protected right forever, okay, even that, guys, is not enough freedom for me. All right. And so why do I bring that up in this context? I don't know. And I talked about the old guys last segment who are very upset, who the narrative that they've been fed by Fauci, by the government. And guys, these are people that grew up at a time, they grew up in some of them fought in the Vietnam War. Like, how did they get here? Back all the way around now to Neil Young. Keep on rocking in a free world. Neil Young, the Canadian rocker, the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, the Four Dead in Ohio, the anti-war rock and roll legend, tells Spotify that if they don't remove the Joe Rogan podcast, guys, and I've listened to the Joe Rogan podcast, and I did a show on the interactions that are going on there, tells Spotify, keep on rocking in the free world. This guy who sang like he believed these things tells Spotify that either they remove the Joe Rogan podcast or they remove his music. His music will no longer be available to play on Spotify. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed, guys. Somewhat of a counterculture hero, guys. We grew up on rock and roll. You know that. Like Pink Floyd's The Wall. Like, these things were formative. Talking about the Four Dead in Ohio, the anti-Vietnam War protesters that got killed. Talking about those things through music was amazing. And now the only place you can find that, well, there is music dealing with the COVID lockdowns. It's available on TikTok, and I'm on TikTok, believe it or not. The Freedom Variant is on TikTok, and it's going around. Like, there are places to have our voices, and so the decision when uh, Peter McCullough gets 50 million views with Joe Rogan, and your average CNN has 10 million views a day. Like the decision for Spotify was easy. All right. Right at this point, Spotify said, okay, Neil, we'll take down your music. I'm sure that they're not happy about it. I'm sure that they're not happy about it. And guys, I want to talk about that phenomena again, once again, what's going on with this guys like WYSL and WACK, right? The guts to present alternative views, guys, and to offer real information that's important to community. It takes guts, and it takes you guys continuing to interact with WYSL and WACK and A Free Solution and all the other programs that are available on WYSL and WACK. It takes that to keep our voices being heard. It's incredibly important. Larry Sharp, Kevin Wilson, Craig Miles, okay, Andrew Hollister, Sean Hannon's been on the show, Rich Pertel's been on the show, Thomas Daniel Queter's been on the show, Jim Ostrowski has been on this show, Jose Pio's been on with Kevin Wilson. To keep and Kevin, Jose, I can't say enough about this guy, right? He is a Rochester area anti-mandate, anti-vaccine mandate Democrat. All right, period. All right, so that's what's going on in the world. But guess what, guys? I'm not even done with Canada right now. All right, like Neil Young being the Canadian rocker that supposedly believed in freedom and was an anti-war counterculture hero. I guess he made millions, like selling his views. Okay, like great. All right, I'm cool with that. All right, totally cool with that. But to then not live those views is a problem for me. All right, and I'm disappointed, and I don't know how to fix it. And I'm concerned that there may not be a fix. Okay, like that we are moving in this ever increasing dystopian authoritarian spiral where people like Kathy Hochul got to say things like masks and vaccines are what kept schools open. That's not what kept schools open. Okay, changing the guidance about COVID kept schools open. Telling schools that they needed to work hard at staying open changed the dynamics of schools being open. All right, not backing off of that position. That's what changed keeping schools open, because kids are getting COVID every single day and they're not freaking out about it as much anymore. And I have a kid in school. I know it firsthand. It's a reality. Okay, they're still doing crazy things like saying, okay, half the basketball team can't actually play basketball right now because they're on quarantine, but those kids can come watch, and they're sitting in the stands watching the game. So, I mean, my kid's a wrestler, guys. I'm telling you, the kids are wearing chin diapers. Okay, that two kids wrestling engaged in combat on a mat for sport, guys. Okay, are wearing masks on their chin to prevent the spread of COVID. That's a science of compliance. You're not going to change my mind about it. It is not science. Okay, but I'm not done with Canada, and I'm not done with the fact that we're not done. Okay, because as the narrative starts to change and dissolve, and the CDC and the FDA are losing their grasp of power, when Joe Biden, the promises that Joe Biden made and the promises that Trump made, guys, they're in line with each other. Okay, but Biden is worse. Okay, look, Biden is worse. All right, period. I mean, is he Jimmy Carter level bad? He may be worse. All right, but he's not as dumb as everybody's saying. I'm telling you that right now too. Like maybe he's in cognitive decline, but he's not as dumb as everybody's saying he is. He's not. He's smart, but he made promises that he can't keep. And as that grasp on power starts to fade, as the narrative starts to crumble, and I see older men angry, and I know that they're not the only ones that are feeling this. The promises that were made, that the government made, are not being kept because of people that did not get the vaccine. And guys, you can check your receipts on that. Read articles about it. Read data analysis about it. Read science stuff. Listen to some of the podcasts on Joe Rogan and make that decision for yourself. If that was a promise that ever should have been made, and if it's a promise that couldn't be kept. And guys, I can't believe that. Coming up on another break, I will be right back after these messages. Tim O'Connor, the Freedom Variant. Be back soon. The pause for editing and the bonus content for you, the internet viewer. Welcome back. It's Tim O'Connor, the Freedom Variant. And guys, yeah, I've been saying I'm not done talking about Canada, and again, how not since August 24th, 1814 have I been this disappointed in Canada. All right. And so, guys, do you know what happened on August 24th, 1814? I think you do. The Canadians marched down, helped burn down the White House. Whatever. It happened. It's history. It's real. Okay. Anyway, so Quebec, guys, I probably talked about on other shows, if on maybe some of my other podcasts or something. Okay, but Quebec's really been struggling with this COVID thing, and there seems to be what I would call a real power struggle in Quebec, because they were like, yeah, we're gonna fire all the people that won't get the vaccine, and they're like, no, we're not gonna fire all the people that are going to get the vaccine, and yeah, no, we're going to fire them all. Well, we're only going to fire some of them, and if they promise to get the vaccine even a couple months down the road, we're going to keep them on. And they realized that they were going to create a health crisis, but that there's some sort of power struggle in Quebec going on, and I don't know all of the details, but I do know that their latest detail, the latest issue that they're having, okay, is that now Quebec has, and guys, I got to refer to the article, because honestly, I don't think if I just tried to say it, I don't think you would, I don't think you'd believe me, man. Personally, I want it to not be true. I posted it on my page, and people are like, oh, this is definitely fake news. Okay. And so the new rules that go into effect on Monday, and I'm referring to an Outkick article about Quebec bans unvaxxed shoppers from large stores, limits purchases to food and medicine. First of all, Amazon's like, hey, Quebec, whoever came up with this rule, I love you guys, man. This is great. Unvaxxed shoppers in Quebec, because apparently there's still some there. Even though the other thing they're doing is I believe they've proposed, whether they've enacted it or not, is a unvaccinated taxation, the vaccination taxation. So Canada's lost its mind. It's under the leadership of this Justin Trudeau, who guys, at what point do we start drawing parallels between us and the 1930s and 1940s? Like, when do we get to start drawing those comparisons? This guy's going around saying, again, I've mentioned earlier in the show, but anti-vaxxers are racist, misogynists, and those things make it to the zeitgeist. And people that are terrified and believing in what the government says to them, it's not a hard stretch for them to travel down that road. Like, I got friends that they're dusting off their, I don't know. I don't want to go into that. I've got friends that are getting prepared to help fight Trump the way that they fought Trump in the past, with marches and funny hats. Okay. And they're dusting them off and they're getting ready. Whatever. I think it's horrible. So anyways, this issue in Quebec, all right, unvaccinated persons who go to a store such as Target or Walmart, where they can get food and medicine, will have to be accompanied by a store employee as they shop, and will not be allowed to make purchases other than food or medicine. Now, to me, well, no, regardless of your position on vaccines, regardless of your position on anything, that is a criminal injustice. All right. Like, oh, is it a criminal injustice? Okay. So I want to choose my words wisely, because I'm literally on a radio station. That's important. So it should be considered, okay, it's horrible, period. I don't like it. It's bad. Whether it's criminal or not, Time will tell. Probably some authoritarian legislative body granted some authoritarian executive power to some authoritarian. And so this is probably totally legal. But I think that we should all be embarrassed by this, the entire world. And they're not, guys, ladies and gentlemen, they're not. And I think that that's a problem. So like, Kevin and I have been kicking around, like, what's the goal? Virus avoidance or virus avoidance is impossible. A virus doesn't have an agenda. Therefore, it will outwork what we think we can do to stop it. Okay. It's already outsmarted the mRNA. It's already outsmarted the smartest scientists in the world. So, purportedly. Even now, they're saying there's a stealth variant of COVID that is decided that it's going to be hard to detect, which is a normal evolutionary process for a virus, whether you like it or not, because they don't have a brain and their only goal is to reproduce. They do throw off variants all the time. The variants that are generally more successful, okay? The variants that are generally more successful when it comes to a virus, that doesn't mean that there's not outtakes and outkicks and things occasionally break worse. They become less virulent and slightly more contagious. Each variant, those variants stand, it's simple mathematics. Those variants stand a better chance of surviving, right? Think about it, guys. If a virus mutates, every mutation is worse for its host and makes the host sicker and die faster. That variant of a virus does not survive. All right. We even saw it with Ebola, for goodness sakes. Okay. Like, its variants, it kills its host too quickly. It didn't stand a great chance of becoming completely successful. Somehow in the United States, like no one died from it anyway, except for people that brought it here. So those things are absolutely real. But here we have in Canada this struggle for power. This I use the word dystopian too much, okay? But this is dystopian that, and I just feel like there should be an outrage, an outcry, a stand against this kind of behavior. So Premier Francois Legault stated that for now, 2 doses of the vaccine will be required to enter stores. But good news, Canada, that will eventually change to 3. As boosters follow, you can expect the Quebec government to require additional vaccinations before allowing residents to browse for a new desk chair or stock up on candles. Guys, Amazon says thank you. Amazon says thank you to the Quebec government. Thank you very much for making people stay at home to buy their cool stuff and get it shipped right to their door. Because we talk about the government response to COVID and how, first of all, this does prop up big business. Maybe there's some square footage regulations, like maybe these people can go into smaller stores and buy stuff. I'm a little bit unclear on that, but the main goal is to force you to comply to their vaccination regime. When in fact, like, the most effective booster, according to the CEO of Pfizer, won't even probably be available till March. And that's a booster that may be effective against the Omicron variant. Now the stealth Omicron variant is a whole new subject, guys. So that's the thing. At least right now, the virus is traveling on the trajectory of what historical viruses have traveled on. So that's good. I don't know, though. When I look at what's going on, I have moved past concerned, and now I want to talk about, guys, in this last couple minutes here, if you've been able to stick with this conversation for too long, because I think people are on some level facing COVID burnout. They want better answers. But how, as you and I are listening to each other and having these conversations, how do we move forward when people have been effectively mobilized and convinced of things that are impossible to prove, I made a joke. I don't know if you guys know the philosophical argument about the flying spaghetti monster, but I, the freedom variant, am protecting you from the flying spaghetti monster. And how do we know? Nobody, I've seen no reports of anybody being attacked by a flying spaghetti monster. Therefore, what I say, I'm demonstrating evidence of what may be true. And that on some level is how Kathy Hochul is dealing with COVID. All right. And I think I'll be honest with you with this fighting court. I think that she was preparing to have a big celebration. Let's say March, when the weather gets better and all of a sudden people are getting sun and people are getting out of their houses and they're cleaning things up, that she was going to be able to say, oh, look, guys, our authoritarian draconian policies have conquered COVID for now. We need to be vigilant, but I am going to go ahead and lift most of the restrictions. So you kids playing baseball out in the field, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. I mean, when you're inside, you're probably, because I'm like, I know you know that I'm hypothesizing and whatever, and I'm trying to have some fun before the end of the show. But so that's why she's reticent in this fight of continuing her mask mandate. And so like the Department of Education is like, well, the governor can say whatever she wants, but our mask mandate is our mask mandate. Because I don't know that any of that's real. Like, I mean, it is real, okay? It is happening, but are they right according to the law and according to our sense of individual liberties and responsibilities to ourselves and each other? And I know there's an argument to be made. Get the vaccine because you're protecting other people. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem to be working. No offense, right, to the people that are getting the vaccine. If the vaccine, and guys, well, I've talked about other shows, that the statistical analysis is much abused in this COVID pandemic. So how do we fix it, guys? I'm running out of time, but I think maybe we try to talk about, Kevin and I will try to talk about this on Friday, but how do we fix it? Because it's a conundrum. Anyways, it's Tim O'Connor, the Freedom Variant. Thanks, WYSL. Thank you, WACK. See you later.